Okay, everyone. Well, welcome everybody to the March 2nd, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. It's 3 p.m. and we'll get started. There will be no brown bag held on Wednesday, March 17th this month. No brown bag. Okay, the following items will be continued to the April 6th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Item 1, the proposed growth plan amendment in Section 5, Township 138 North, Range 49 West. Also, item 6 is continued, the proposed zone change to neighborhood commercial at 619 South University Drive. And the following item has been withdrawn. Item number 2, the proposed text amendment to the Land Development Code. So there will be no presentations by staff on these items and no action will be taken by the commission. I'm not sure, is there anyone that was planning to testify on these items here today? Okay, it doesn't look that way. All right, thank you. And also, after our agenda, Jim Gilmore will present item E1. And Maggie will be also presenting item 7 for Kylie today. So watch me mess that one up. All right, and we'll maybe talk about future brown bags and a meeting in person in April at the end of the agenda. So, all right, we'll get into, I'll take a motion for the approval of the order of agenda, please.
So moved.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting of February 2nd, 2021. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 2nd.
This is Melissa, and I will approve.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
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 What happened to me?
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the public hearing items. Items 3A, continue the hearing on an application requesting a zoning change from MR3 multiple dwelling residential to DMU downtown mixed use. Maggie, please.
Good afternoon, commissioners. As a reminder, if you just want to mute yourself, if you're not presenting, that would be great. Items 3A and 3B on your agenda are titled 220 edition. The subject property is located at 214 and 220 6th Avenue North. They are owned by River City Holdings Fund, LLC, and represented today by James Plaston. This is the subject property aerial, and it's currently zoned MR3. These are the properties as they exist today. The applicant is seeking approval of a zoning map amendment and minor subdivision entitled 220 edition. The request is to replat the 2 existing lots into one lot that will be zoned DMU downtown mixed use. It is staff's understanding that the applicant would like to construct an apartment complex on the newly developed lot. Written notice of these proposals was sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and to date, staff has received 1 inquiry and no complaints. At this time, staff finds that all criteria have been met, and we are recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Maggie? Any questions for Maggie?
Maggie, that's not in the historic overlay, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I invite the applicant to speak if he so wishes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to have me on. And I don't really have anything to add other than we want to put a new building up and help it. Hopefully, it serves the community well.
Thank you. Any questions for James Platson, commissioners?
Yes, this is Dawn. I just wanted to ask whether, I know your father was in real estate. Are
Yep.
these some of the properties that your family has owned for some time?
The 220 building had a fire in it. We've had that since about 2014. And the reason why all this started was because of the fire. And it was almost totaled out. And rather than fixing up an old, I think it was built in the 1890s, instead of putting all that money into that, we thought we could buy the building next door and put a nice, probably 20, 24 units on that site. And that
Okay,
was-
thank you. Was there a visual image that was in the packet?
No, not yet. We're fine tuning the plans, so there isn't really any renderings yet.
Who's your architect?
Well, that's kind of where I'm in the search of a new one right now.
If I could
So
jump
I'm-
into commissioners, site plan approval isn't actually part of the planning commission entitlement process, so we're only looking at the DMU zoning and the plat today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I will open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment. Any additional discussion, commissioners? Are we ready to act?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Sterling, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Schneider,
Aye.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Tassa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item
Thank you.
4A. Continued hearing on an application zoning request for a zoning change from limited industrial to general commercial and general commercial with a conditional overlay. Megan, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Ruhala Addition is an application for a minor subdivision, 1 block, 2 lots, a zoning change from limited industrial and general commercial to general commercial with a planned unit development overlay and a PUD master land use plan, as well as a PUD final plan. The property is located at 1612, 1620, 1624, 1630, 1632, 1666, and 1702 First Avenue North. So you can see here up on the aerial image, it's bounded by First Avenue North and the railroad tracks on the south and is in the 16 and 1700 block. Applicant Kevin Bartram from MBA and Mark Bjornstead from Drecker are here if you have any questions. This application was heard and continued from the February 2nd Planning Commission meeting, and it is typical for planned unit development applications to have 2 public hearings at the Planning Commission meeting. Up on your screen shows slides of the site condition, not today, it's pretty sunny today, but up on the upper left, you'll see this is an image facing south from First Avenue, the area that's being proposed to be rezoned from limited commercial to general commercial, where a new building will be built. And the other image shows easterly along First Avenue, some of the buildings that are there today that will remain. A quick image for you shows the extents of the zoning and PUD application, which is the black boundary, and the plat boundary is the blue hatch. So you'll see there's a very small portion on the south side that is not included on the plat. Quick note that though the agenda hearing notices and property owner letters note that there's a conditional overlay associated with the property, there is in fact not a conditional overlay currently on the property. There are existing CUPs for parking and residential and industrial use on the site, as well as a variance for the structure on the southeast corner. Should the planned unit development be approved, the CUPs and the variance will no longer be necessary. The applicant has applied for a zoning change with PUD overlay in order to tailor development standards to specifics of the project, Brewhalla Market, which is a new mixed-use building on the west portion of the subject property. According to the applicant, the Brewhalla Market project is proposed to create a new 4-story building mixed-use facility with underground parking, 2 stories of food market, retail, and multi-use event space, 3rd floor lodging units, 24 rooms but could possibly be apartments, 4th floor apartments, a combination of 2 and 1 bedroom for a total of 18 units, as well as an on-grade corridor connecting the Brewhalla Market to the current Drucker Brewery space. Due to the complexities of the site and the shared parking, the PUD will include the whole property, and existing structures and land uses located on the eastern portion of the project are not expected to change with this project. In order to accommodate the development of the mixed-use building, the applicant has applied for a subdivision to create 2 lots and 1 block for the subject property. Based on future ownership of the development, the proposed lot line divides the development. However, the structures on each side of the lot line will be connected through a corridor, which would result in a 0 lot line between the 2 lots. Up on your screen is an image of the proposed master land use plan submitted by the applicant. As noted, structures on the eastern part of the property are existing, and on the western part is the Brewhalla Market. The master land use plan shows the building envelope of structures, parking, vehicular and pedestrian circulation, as well as open space. The PUD final plan, which is shown on your slides, the PUD is shown on the slides, and the purpose of the final plan is to verify that it conforms to the master plan consistent with the intent and layout. The applicant will also need to submit for a building permit, where all review departments will review the plans for compliance with their respective codes. There's a slide that shows a rendering of the future structure. And another one. As permitted by section 200301E of the LDC, there's a number of different zoning standards that are applied to be modified through the PUD, which are up on your screen and include allowing residential industrial use, establishing residential density of 74 units per acre, reducing the setback of the shared lot line to lots 1 and 2 to 0 feet, and to reduce the eastern lot line of the property to 2 feet and the rear lot line of the eastern lot to 0 feet to accommodate existing structures. This would not be for a new structure. Reduce the parking lot perimeter landscaping to 4 feet and to modify off-street parking requirements for a mixed-use development. Parking requirements are shown on your screen. Lot 1, which is the Brewhalla site, has a couple of different ratios for parking on the screen, which would provide 1.5 spaces per residential unit, 1 space per 250 square feet of conference and event spaces, food market, and patios, 1 space per 500 square feet for kitchen and ancillary spaces, and any other uses would be per the land development code. For Lot 2, which is the existing site, which the ratios that are shown on your screen currently exist today through CUPs, so there is no change to what's existing today, but would provide 2 spaces for the 1 residential unit that's allowed on the site and 1 space per 500 square feet for all uses. So the uses and parking ratios are separate, but location of the parking can be located on either lots 1 and 2. The PUD will also provide additional standards, which are noted on your screen, which include prohibited uses, bike parking facilities, separate vehicular and pedestrian circulation, minimum open space of 20%. And the standards up on your screen relate more to the manufacturing and limits of manufacturing on the site. Staff has received 1 letter of support for the application, which was included in your packet, which was also the same letter that was received in your packet for the February Planning Commission meeting. The decision-making body for the PUD final plan is the Planning Commission. So there's a recommendation on the screen for approval, but also contingency of the PUD final plan based on approval of the City Commission for the zoning change and the PUD master plan. To that end, staff is recommending approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Megan?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Rocky.
Yeah.
On Maggie, thanks for the presentation. I think this is a sort of an exciting project that expands a great place in Fargo. I guess on the parking though, I had one question. You know, I work down on 42nd Street, and it's kind of unique because all the buildings are fronted toward the road, and all the parking is behind our offices. And I always thought that was kind of neat about Drecker, is that you didn't just drive by and have sort of these big box feels. And I guess this looks like a departure from that. So now when you're driving, you have this big parking lot, and the building is set way back, and it's also right next to the railroad tracks. It seems like we're setting a precedent here for what we want along all of First Avenue in the future. And so it seems like these big box type things aren't as appealing when you're driving down a major corridor. Is there any reason for that? That you know of?
Not that I'm aware. I'll maybe ask the applicant to, if they have comments on the location of the building.
Hello, I'm Kevin Bartram with MBA Architects and Mark Bjornstead with Drecker. The biggest reason for the parking in the front and the building in the back is the connection to Drecker. Drecker is in the back of the brick building, and it's imperative that this new addition connect up with Drecker for the proposed plan to work as it is. So we really had no choice but to put the parking in the front. I think some of the buildings you're talking about, Mr. Schneider, on 42nd Street, I think I was the architect on 42nd north of 32nd Avenue, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. And whenever we could do that on other sites, we would like to do that, but it just wouldn't allow us to connect up to Drecker and do that in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I continue?
Go ahead, Rocky.
Thanks for that answer. That makes a lot of sense. I guess one concern I have with that, if that's the limitation you have as sort of your business model, is, you know, we'd like this area at some point, if we're expanding sort of downtown, or this is a new warehouse district, or, you know, you've created something here, which, you know, kudos to you, but they sort of want it to be walkable between the sites, you know, not just through that attached corridor, but walkable through the sidewalks. And it doesn't look like there's a tremendous amount of planning into how to make that walkable from one, you know, outside anyways, from one site to the next. You have sort of a strip of a dedicated walkway, but given the size of the parking lot, it seems like you could make that a lot more mobile friendly, I guess, for bikes or walkers or anybody to connect that corridor to the street.
This is Dawn Morgan.
Hang on a minute, Don. Let Kevin answer Rocky's question.
Okay.
We do have
Sure.
again, we have the internal connection between the two buildings, and that's going to make it walkable between somebody that parked on the east could enter the building, go through Drecker, and walk through the building into the new addition, or vice versa. The other consideration is we did add a cross parking lot that connects the parking from the east to the parking on the west. It happens to be up near the street, but that connection is made so vehicles or pedestrians can connect on the outside between the two lots. But we don't really expect that there's going to be a huge crossover between the two lots unless there's a big event going on, in which case they're going to be heading to the inside of the building more than the outside of the building, and can connect between the existing Drecker and the new building.
Thank you, Kevin. Any more questions, Rocky?
Yeah, I guess one more, you know, and
Yes.
I think that makes sense right now, but I think we've seen elsewhere in the area, when you have something popular like this, you're going to spur development all around there, and there will be cross traffic between them. I mean, you look at Junkyard in Moorhead and what's that's done for that sort of micro area in Moorhead, you know, stuff is there. You're creating traffic in the future, you know, which is a great great thing. We just need to plan for it. I guess I wonder, is that strip of sidewalk, is that a raised dedicated sidewalk? I know I was at the tavern down on 32nd by my work, and they have a pretty nice walkway through their parking lot that you can, it really encourages that versus not.
At this point, that area is just striping on the parking lot, the connection, if I understand the question right, the connection from the public sidewalk to the front entry. It's just
Yeah.
striping.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Don.
This is,
Go ahead, Don.
yeah, I agree with Rocky. I wouldn't want to think about creating a precedent, but considering the requirements for Drecker, I'm wondering if it could be mitigated with some kind of landscape planning or architecture along the street so that the entrance would not look like it's just a vast open parking lot. And we know how they look, especially in the winter, but they're not much better in the summer. So I think the aesthetic of the design and the project is really important because it's such an exciting project. Just another aside, I was just wondering if at the same time you're going to be redoing the road in a parking lot that is to the east of Drecker. Is that going to be all one project?
There's an easement on the west, if I understand the question, there's an easement on the west side of the lot that we're approving at the same time. That's an easement for the railroad to get access to their tracks. It's owned by the property owner to the west, and we're they're agreeing to let us share that drive. In exchange, we're paving that drive. I'm not sure, Don, if that's the question, or were you talking about something over closer to Drecker?
Okay, let me just go back and ask if there's something that you could do with landscaping along First Avenue.
Well, there's existing landscaping along First Avenue, some bigger trees that are already established. We're going to try to salvage and maintain all of those trees. And then there is a landscaping buffer along First Avenue. It's not overly large, but there is a landscaping buffer already existing along First Avenue. But the biggest thing would be to use and retain the existing trees, including the really big tree that's in the parking lot. We're going to save that tree as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the aesthetics. I know that in a lot of cities required that there be actually even some kind of berm that can be planted with small shrubs and that sort of thing that will create a better aesthetic than just looking into a parking lot. That was my comment.
It would be very possible to do some shrubs along First Avenue and also along the west side of the property line to screen the parking a little bit.
Any other?
All right. Now, the other thing, this is,
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I have
Bill.
one more question. This is just, I just don't know the answer, but you're combining the two properties into one large development. Is that right?
In a sense, yeah, they're working together. Yep.
So in the future, if you decided you wanted to sell one of the apartment buildings or one of the buildings to the west, would that be any kind of problem, or is it just a matter of real estate transaction?
It's set up right now where this new project could be sold off independent of the existing complex, the way the property lines are set up, and that's part of the reason for the replat. It would probably be a little more difficult to sell the individual buildings in the east complex. But right now it works very well to have all those buildings work together. So we don't see any real need to sell those buildings individually, but the new project could be sold off separate.
I see. I just wanted to comment too that there's really a lot of cutting out. It's hard to hear what the conversation is. I don't know exactly where that's coming from, but I also don't know if anyone else has the problem.
We'll check on that.
Yeah, if everybody can turn their microphones off or make sure they're muted if you're not
Yeah.
speaking.
Make sure you're muted.
There is quite a bit of background noise.
Mr. Chair, this is Rocky. Could I ask another question?
Oh, sure, Rocky.
Thanks. I know I jumped the gun here, but I was going to go back to Megan, I think, as the presenter, right? Is that?
Go ahead.
Given this is we're being asked to approve a PUD, we have a little more latitude, I think, in asking some questions. But in the PUD, it talks about a pedestrian circulation system and pedestrian walkways, and it talks about on-site bicycle facilities and stuff. I guess I would like to include in the PUD that it's a dedicated raised sidewalk from the public right of way to the building. Is that something that we can do as a planning commission?
Thanks, Commissioner. That's certainly something you could do as part of the Planning Commission. You could make that recommendation, amend what is in the packet to include that and make that in a motion.
If I could comment on that, I think if we have, Megan and I have visited about this already, if we were to make that a raised dedicated sidewalk, we would probably lose about 25 or 30 parking places. So we don't have the width anywhere where we can do that. I was actually thinking about contesting the idea of the pedestrian connectivity in the parking lot on the basis that you can have a direct line from First Avenue straight to the front door if you want to, but anybody that parks off in the corner or off on the side, they're going to make a beeline for the front door also. They're not going to go sideways over to that sidewalk and then walk into the front door from there on a parking lot of this size. There just seems like there's an awful lot of examples around town, large parking lots, whether it's a Target or a Walmart or a grocery store or a lumberyard or a big box of some sort that has no pedestrian connectivity. We have that on the rail yard complex to the east because Drecker's entrance is tucked away behind there, and so it helps direct people back to that area. But in this case, it just seems like it's a little bit impractical to expect that somebody's going to walk only on that one sidewalk, only to get to the front door, going through the parking lot. But we have agreed to do the striping to help highlight where that entrance is as people are walking along the First Avenue sidewalk.
Thanks. I appreciate that response. I guess the difference I see here is that you're asking for a PUD with residential uses there too. So it's not just a big box, it's somebody's living there too. And so the only way they can get to and fro is by their car and beelining across a parking lot. That doesn't seem to cut it for me.
Well, the residential though is parking underneath. So they're accessing their dedicated parking underneath and walking and going through the building. So they're not approaching from public parking on First Avenue or another street nearby.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Bartram? All right. I'll open up the public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this project? See none, I'll close the public comment. Any additional discussion, or are we ready to act? Do I have a motion?
I guess I'd ask staff. I don't know what motion I want to make. I definitely want to approve this, and I think it's a fantastic project. But I do think because we're creating a new area of town here and we're putting residential back there, that we want to have connectivity to the street and to the sidewalk in some way that can work through all seasons when visitors show up or whatever. But I'm not sure, staff, what the appropriate motion is that's feasible. I don't want to make this some crazy, sky bridge to the road or something, but just something simple that seems other developments around town have been able to do and accommodate.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Schneider. As the applicant, Mr. Bartram noted, staff did relay the comment of, ideally it would be a sidewalk, it would be raised, but at a minimum would want to see a separate dedicated striped area for circulation. And that would and is consistent with the existing conditional use permit that's on the other property. So for consistency's sake, staff was, like I said, at a minimum, all right with that connectivity. I think if your commission wanted to require a separate sidewalk. That is something within what you could do. But as the applicant noted, that may impact his site plan and parking. So it may affect the application and may need to have some further coordination on how, if there's reduced parking, how parking may now work, and also how parking may work, and then also how the layout of the site may change as well. But it is something that your commission can require.
Well, what do the other commissioners feel? Am I on an island in this, or is this?
Since it is a PUD, we could approve the master plan and then not the final plan at this point too, with the direction that we work on it until we approve the final plan.
That works for me. I'll make that motion that we approve this plan, but not the final plan as Mark's laid out. And direct staff to try to work on the issue.
Okay, does everybody understand Rocky's motion? All right, people are nodding. Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
I will second. This is Miranda.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Could we interject at this point? Or?
If we could ask people to mute their microphones again, or I'm not sure if it's a caller or.
Okay, everybody please mute. We're getting a lot of feedback here. Can I let Kevin comment at this point? I'm not.
That's your call, Chair.
Let's go ahead to get to the root of this thing.
Well, I guess I'm not really sure I understand what we're approving or what we're delaying for approval. I mean, it's hard for us to move forward with a project if we don't know until later what might be approved. We've submitted the plan for building permit, so we're hoping that that'll go through here in the next few weeks, which involves all the different agencies that the city has. For us to do a dedicated raised concrete sidewalk, we have to lose one of two things. We either have to lose landscaping or we have to lose parking. The only other alternative is diagonal parking, which for a facility like this would be very, very confusing for people to know where to park in a diagonal parking setup. So, again, I guess I'm asking that the striping on the parking lot be considered adequate instead of a raised dedicated sidewalk.
Mark, do you want to explain the motion you made or suggested?
I suggested that maybe at this time, the master plan be approved with some direction on what staff can work on to bring the final plan back.
Okay, so explain to everybody with what Kevin just said,
In a
where does
PUD
that put the project?
In a PUD, you have kind of the conceptual master plan, but then you also bring forward a final plan. The final plan has a lot more details in that. So in essence, by approving the master plan, what the planning commission would be saying is we like this concept, it needs to be tweaked a little bit. We're not quite ready to approve the final plan. However, we'd like staff to work on these issues and bring the final plan back for final approval.
And that would come back to the planning commission?
Yes. We have four options in front of us. You know, we could deny it, we could approve it, we could approve the master plan and bring back the final plan. We could continue the whole thing all together and work on another month with some direction from staff. There's quite a bit of options. It's just a matter of maybe what Commissioner Schneider is interested in proposing in his motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second, and we're in discussion.
I guess I would like some clarification from Commissioner Schneider to direct staff on what to look for in the final plan when we bring that back with that motion.
If I may.
Yeah, Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, if I may, if you want to put this motion to bed, I would vote on it and then, yeah, it's just it gets a little dicey when you start doing discussion, not to lose the motion is all. Yeah. You have a live motion on the table.
Okay, but we're also in discussion. All right, we can. All right, so any further discussion? I guess I'm confused here a little bit, but, all right.
I guess, Mr. Chair, to add to the clarifying, we're being asked to do two things. And we can bring back the final plan in the next month if there's something we want, that if we're the final decision body. If there's something the planning commission wants out of this, we can do it. If something the commission doesn't want to do, that's fine too. It just seems like we're creating a new area of town, and we should put some thought into how that's all going to connect at some point. And if we're okay with stripes on a big parking lot as adequate, that's it. I'm asking the staff to work with the applicant a little bit more to find a creative solution. I know they're very skilled architects that can figure out how to make this work in a little, may cost a little more. You may lose a couple parking spots or something, but I think it would benefit the whole project.
All right, I'm going to call the roll call vote. So,
Sobolik,
No.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
No.
Tassa,
Aye.
Morgan,
No.
Sherling, Sherling,
Mary?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Schneider,
Yes.
Gunkelman.
No, so we have unless we're missing somebody, we have a tie vote on this. Okay, procedurally, where do we go from here?
I have two questions.
I would assume, wouldn't the motion fail on a tie?
I'm asking that question. If we have legal,
Yeah, so I have two questions. One is, I'll have to turn to Miranda and look. Did that motion include the plat?
Mark made the motion.
What I recommended or suggested, which didn't include the plat, it was just referring to the PUD.
Okay, so somebody help me out here.
Yeah, so you can try for another motion if you'd like. Or you can defer action on this as a tie vote. And again, you're a recommending body to the city commission. And, but then you do need to take action on the plat. And so you have, I would suggest you try another motion to see if if someone changes their mind.
Another motion.
Well, I'm going to change my mind. This is Dawn. I want to change my mind. And if what we're voting about is the PUD, I'd like to approve that.
So someone needs to make a motion, and please include the plat.
I'd like to make a motion. Oh,
To include the plat.
sorry. Yes.
So you're voting on the plat, the minor plat, and if you want to try a different motion on the zoning. And the zoning is whether or not to accept the PUD master plan and final plan, or just master plan.
Okay. Let's start over.
Or you could take them one at a time.
Okay, so right now we have a motion on the floor on the master plan and the plot, right, Dawn?
Right.
Okay, is there a second for that? Hearing no second, dies for lack of second. All right, let's try something else. So with the tie, can I declare that that is defeated then, the original motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may interject, the motion would be lost if it was a tie.
Okay, so right now the original motion dies from the tie. So back
Yes.
to, we'll start over. Does somebody want to make a motion? Commissioner Snyder, just to clarify something, is the only thing that I see that you have is the connectivity with this pedestrian walkway. Is there, and I'm asking staff, is there a way that we can keep this thing moving along with a suggested motion that the walkway come under review?
I would like to also ask that the landscaping on First Avenue come under review.
We can't really take under review. We either are approving a final plan or we're
Right.
not. This is, just to explain, the final plan is basically, when a PUD happens, the final plan is basically, you are taking the authority of the site plan or review away from the administration. So basically, you're saying because of all these special conditions, you are in essence providing these folks a permit for a site plan. Otherwise, they would be following the general practices for site plan and building permit review. So in essence, you're making the regulation for what we review the PUD, the site plan under. I think Megan and Kevin, under their best efforts, created a final plan for your review. If it sounds like there's still doubt on the landscape parameters and the sidewalk parameters, then we need more clarity from the Planning Commission on what you want to do as part of that.
Okay, commissioners, having heard that, do we need to make a different motion?
Can we at least take action on the minor plat so we don't lose that?
Okay, so explain to everybody still what that gives.
So the applicant has three entitlements in front of you: a subdivision and a zoning change. That zoning change includes a PUD master land use plan and a final plan. If you look at the motion in your packet, you have under item 1, a subdivision plat, item 2, zoning change from LI and GC and limited commercial to GC with a PUD and overlay, and 3, a master land use plan. So if you just want to take those 3 things one at a time, we can certainly do those 3 things.
All right, so we'll start with the general commercial with the P. Okay, just take that over. So the first motion, Nicole, would be to accept.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to jump in and move that we approve the subdivision plat as presented. So just taking number 1.
All right.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second on subdivision plat only. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Tassa, Aye. Schneider. Schneider.
Sorry. Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, okay, motion carries on the subdivision plat. All right, so, item 2, the zoning change from limited industrial to limited commercial with a PUD.
I will make that motion to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and any motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Sobolik.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Schneider.
No.
Stofferin.
Aye.
Schirling.
Yes.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, moving on to the PUD master land use plan.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can we make a motion to table that one? Or to continue it until next month or whenever they can give us a little more detail?
Yes, that can be tabled.
Okay, that would be my motion then.
Okay, we have a motion to table item 3, the PUD master land use plan.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Morgan.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
No.
Schneider.
Aye.
Sobolik.
No.
Schirling.
Yes.
Stofferin.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
No, motion carries. All right. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda. Item 5, hearing on an application requesting a zoning change from GC, general commercial with a conditional overlay, to general commercial with a PUD. Or I just hit the same one again, didn't I?
Nope, Chair, I believe that was right.
No, I'm right. Okay, sorry.
Items 5A,
Yes,
Items 5A, 5B, and 5C is entitled the EOLA addition, which is an application for a major subdivision. There's an error up on your screen here, and it's not minor. It is a major subdivision, 2-block, 7-lot subdivision, including a waiver for a reduced street right-of-way. This is a replat of Lot 4, Block 1, Anderson Park, 2nd Edition. Includes a zoning change from GC, general commercial, with a CO, conditional overlay, to GC, general commercial, with a PUD overlay, and a request to repeal the conditional overlay, and a PUD master land use plan. There is no final plan as part of this application at this point. The property is located at 2470 and 2500 45th Street South and contains approximately 16.74 acres. And applicant Blake Nybakken with Epic Companies is here if you have any questions. As of the writing of the staff report, staff continues to work with the applicant to confirm and solidify details of the PUD. The staff report and presentation includes a recommendation for the major subdivision application, including a waiver for reduced street right-of-way. However, in order to provide additional time to coordinate the PUD project, staff is recommending continuation of the zoning and PUD master land use plan applications. So up on your screen, you will see context image similar to the last one, where the black outline shows the application boundary. The plat encompasses that whole area. In purple, you'll see 24th Avenue South dedication. It's currently owned by the city of Fargo. And in the blue hatch is the location of the zoning and the PUD. Images of the property here. On your upper left, you'll see the property from 45th Street facing into the property. And on the right, this is at the location of the current 26th Avenue facing east. And another image into the property, which is the previously used as the part of the Anderson softball complex. The applicant has applied for a major subdivision zoning with waiver, zoning change, and PUD overlay in order to tailor development standards to the specifics of the proposed project. The Eola development, which is a new master plan mixed-use development surrounding a 4-acre urban park. The proposed project is 8 7-story buildings with underground parking, 1 to 2 floors of commercial space, and combination of residential condos and apartments with patio spaces that open up to the park. Should be noted that buildings E and 4 are proposed to be residential only at this time. A parking garage is also proposed on the site in the northeast corner. However, if the parking structure is not constructed, the applicant proposes a similar mixed-use structure as the others. The applicant states that the development will be a walkable community that has trails connecting to the park, coordinated events with surrounding community organizations to naturally coexist with the surrounding amenities. Up on your screen is the Eola Edition preliminary plat major subdivision. It also includes the waiver for the reduced street right-of-way. The plat creates 7 lots and 2 blocks and dedicates right-of-way for 24th Avenue. The engineering department is working with a consultant to design this portion of 24th Avenue, and it's anticipated that in the future there'll be a connection further east. The plat area is approximately 16.7 acres, not the 6.7 acres that was noted in the staff report. Earlier today, your commission received a laydown item that was an update of the preliminary plat, and the change includes, if you can see on the very eastern portion of the plat, runs along the east side, if you can see my cursor, and then connects to 26th Avenue. It essentially provides an access easement between the 2 dedicated right-of-ways. Up on your screen just shows the details of the subdivision waiver. The overall width of the right-of-way for a local street adjacent to general commercial zoning districts would be 80 feet, but is proposed to be 73 feet wide. And you'll see here on the master plan, the parking is a little bit more unique, as well as the location of the sidewalks are just adjacent. So that's the reason for the narrower street right-of-way as part of the subdivision waiver. The Public Works Department is working with the applicant on a maintenance agreement to address public improvements, maintenance, and snow removal. The PUD master land use plan shows the building envelope of the structures, parking and circulation, including pedestrian and open space. Please note that the zoning change in the master land use plan are approved by the Planning and City Commission. The Planning Commission will review the final plans for the PUD at some point in the future and may come in as a phased development. As permitted by section 200301E of the Land Development Code, there's a number of different zoning standards that are eligible for modifications through the general commercial zoning district. Up on your screen shows the proposed modifications to allow residential use, establish a maximum density of 70 units per acre, increase the building height within proximity of residentially zoned property, and establish the maximum height for the whole property of 85 feet, reduce the front, street side, and rear setbacks to 10 feet, waive requirement for a parking lot buffer, but should be noted the applicant is working on a proposal to provide plantings within the 45th Street Boulevard, similar to what exists further south, and to modify the minimum off-street parking requirements for the mixed-use development, of which the applicant is working on a parking study. The PUD overlay would establish also additional standards for the development, which is anticipated to be largely consistent with the conditional overlay. Up on your screen are renderings of the development. And at this point, we should note staff has not received any public comment for the application. And at this point, staff is recommending approval of the major subdivision application, which includes a waiver for a reduced street right-of-way, and is recommending continuation of the zoning change and PUD master land use plan to the April 6th Planning Commission meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Megan? Hearing none, I invite the applicant to speak if he wishes to. Any questions for the applicant? He's here if you've got any questions. Hearing none, I will open the public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this project? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment. Any additional discussion, commissioners? Are we ready to act? Do I have a motion?
This is Dawn. I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff recommendations.
We have a motion. Can I get a second, please?
This is Scott. I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. All right. All right, moving on to item 7 on the agenda. Hearing an application requesting a conditional use permit to allow manufacturing and production, industrial services, and warehouse and freight movement uses.
Chair, if we can interrupt and ask
Yeah.
everybody to mute their microphones again.
Please mute your mics, everybody. We're getting a lot of feedback. Freight movement uses in a general commercial zone. Rocking Horse East, second edition. Maggie, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 7 is titled Rocking Horse East Second Edition and is located at 5454 to 5498 51st Avenue South, and it's highlighted here in black. The applicants, Jerry and Teresina Heinz, are requesting a conditional use permit to allow warehouse, manufacturing and production, and industrial service uses in the general commercial zoning district. The subject property is divided into 12 condo units, which are all under one common ownership and leased out. The applicants are requesting a CUP for their business, Steep Me a Cup of Tea. The business model is 45% online retail, 20% in-store retail, 25% in-store light manufacturing, and 10% service. In order to package their product on site and sell it online, they need a conditional use permit for manufacturing and production. Staff feels it is appropriate that the CUP applies to the whole condominium and that the CUP reflects other conditional use permits for industrial uses in the general commercial zoning district that surrounds the subject property. Just so you guys are aware, on the screen right now, these pinky purple ones are the existing CUPs around the subject property. Staff did receive one inquiry from a neighboring property owner who is in support of the project. Based on the conditional use permit criteria of the Land Development Code, staff is recommending approval. This is the site as it exists today. And what you'll see is the 7 conditions on your screen are what we'd like to attach to the approval of this conditional use permit. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. Thanks.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Maggie?
This is Dawn. I'd like to ask a question. Under staff recommendation here, it says under number 4, the manufacturing, production, or processing of food and or animal products shall not be permitted. Am I misunderstanding that, or what they're planning to do with the tea business?
I believe the condition is meant to be specific to animal production.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. It cut out.
Sorry, Don, I believe that condition is meant to be specific to animal production. So it may have just been overlooked, and we can cross it if that makes you more comfortable. But it is just meant to limit animal production, so it's prohibited on site.
Okay, I just think it might be smart to take it out.
Well, though it is specific to animal products, any questions about taking that out?
It says processing food and or animal products. It's not a big deal to me. I'm just clarifying.
In this operation, it's pretty much repackaging something that's already been processed. So it could be left in too.
Okay, I'll agree to that.
All right, any other questions for Maggie? All right, I invite the applicant to speak if they so wish. Or does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Say, this is Bruce Quammen. I'm the developer of the product. Jerry and Teresina have got a family health issue, and so they're not on. But I can speak for them, so I'm available.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Quammen? All right, hearing none, I open the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak for or against this project? Hearing none, I close the public comment. Any additional discussion, commissioners, or are we ready to act?
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve the findings and recommendations of staff and approve the CUP as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I will second this, Miranda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Tassa? Aye. Rosenberg?
Aye.
Sobolik?
Aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
Stofferin?
Aye.
Schneider?
Aye.
Sherling?
Yes.
Gunkelman?
Aye, motion carries. All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8, the hearing on the application requesting to repeal a conditional use permit to allow residential use in the LC limit to commercial zoning district on lots 1 through 5, Block 1, Urban Plains. All right, Maggie.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item 8 on your agenda is titled Urban Plains by Brandt, 5th edition. The existing CUP is currently located at 5600 28th Avenue South, 2850, 2901, 2970, and 2975 Uptown Way South. The applicants are represented today by Brian Pattengale. The applicant is seeking to repeal an existing conditional use permit for residential living on all 5 lots indicated on the aerial, and to reestablish a CUP for residential living with a higher density allotment on only Lot 1, Block 1 of Urban Plains by Brandt, 5th edition. The applicant intends to construct a 4-story mixed-use building on the subject property with main floor retail space and 110 multi-dwelling residential units. This image is just to indicate which lot will actually now have a CUP on it. So if the motion carries today, 2850 will have a CUP with a higher density allotment. Notices of the proposal were sent to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and to date, staff has received no inquiries. Staff finds that all conditions have been met, and we are recommending approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions for Maggie? Okay, hearing no questions. I invite the applicant to speak, if so wish. Brian?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Brian Pattengale with Houston Engineering. This essentially is a cleanup of a previous CUP. The existing CUP was done prior to sort of the finer development of this lot being finalized. So at one point it was one large lot, and then we platted it into the 5 lots you see there today. And so essentially this is a cleanup of that existing CUP to confine it to the actual lot where this multi-use or this residential mixed-use structure will be constructed. The density thing is sort of we are asking for the higher density, but at the same time, we are actually reducing the overall number of lots or units that would have been permitted based on the previous density being applied to a larger land area. So, again, like I said, it's more of a cleanup item on the CUP than anything. So, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Brian? Hearing none, I will open the public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this project? Hearing none, I close the public comment. Any additional discussion, commissioners? Are we ready to act? Do we have a motion?
This is Melissa, and I will move to approve as presented.
We have a motion, and do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Tassa,
Aye.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Stofferin,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to item number 9. A hearing on the application requesting a zoning change from SR3 single dwelling residential to neighborhood commercial. Maggie, please.
Thank you. Item 9 on your agenda is titled Chaz A. Roberts Edition. You'll notice on your hard copies that there's a typo. The actual location is 615 9th Avenue South, not 619. So we're at 615 9th Avenue South. The owner is Paul Anderson, and he is joining us virtually today, as well as the future business owner, Heather All. The applicant is seeking approval of a zoning map amendment from SR3 single dwelling residential to neighborhood commercial. The proposed low-intensity commercial zoning district reflects the recent use of the property as a stained glass workshop, as well as the future use of the property as an antique furniture consignment and repair shop. The business owner anticipates that customers will spend only 10 to 15 minutes dropping off or collecting furniture from the shop, with the occasional customer stopping to purchase refinished antique furniture. For some history on the property, in August of 2000, a variance was granted for a building addition on the rear of the existing structure, which eliminated any area available for off-street parking. In 2013, a second variance was granted that allowed the owner to reconstruct a portion of the existing shop, maintaining the original building footprint. The building fronts 9th Avenue South, which is subject to seasonal parking restrictions from November 1st to April 15th, but allows parking on both sides of the street from April 16th to October 31st. The property owner is aware of these restrictions, which were established prior to approval of both variances. Notice of the proposal were sent to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and to date, staff received 3 inquiries on the project and no formal letters of opposition. Staff finds that all criteria have been met and are recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions for Maggie, commissioners?
This is Dawn. I'd just like to make a comment that this fits in with the 2030 plan in the sense of allowing light commercial enterprises in neighborhoods, going back to a former way of planning for points of interest within the neighborhood. So I think this is a great project.
Thank you. Any other questions for Maggie? All right, I'll invite the applicant to speak if he so wishes. Any questions for Mr. Anderson, commissioners? Making this easy at the end. Hearing none, I'll open it up for, I'll open up the public comment.
Hi, my name is Ann Moynihan. I'm a resident of 809 6th Street South. Our property backs up into the alley, and my concern really is for increased traffic in the alleyway. You know, it's going to impact the quality of our life there. And this is an aside, but during the summer of, well, spring through fall of 2017 and 18, we had, you know, pop-up illegal repairs on the multi-dwelling property on 7th Street that also has some garages and that backs up onto the alley. And so I'm keeping that in mind. There was so much traffic up and down the alley, and it was really disruptive.
Any questions for the speaker, commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to speak for or against this project? Hearing none, I close the public comment. Any other discussion, commissioners, or are you ready to act?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
Thank you. I have a motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Gilmore.
Good afternoon. I'm here to talk to you about a renewal plan and tax increment financing district that the City Commission directed us to prepare. Tentatively, this will be on the City Commission agenda on April 5th. The purpose of a renewal plan is really to lay out a strategy for how to bring new development and really reinvestment into an older area of town where there are challenges for redevelopment. And so what I wanted to do first is go through an example of another renewal plan that was prepared and implemented. And both of these, the example I'll use and the proposal that the City Commission asked us to work on, would include a tax increment financing district where future property tax revenue from the new development would then be used to pay for activities that would encourage that development along the river. But let me first go through an example of how tax increment financing works. This is the area along Robert Street in downtown Fargo where the Roberts Commons parking garage is now kind of the center of the development. So when you do a renewal plan, the first step is to lay out that plan for development to identify what the existing conditions are. This particular TIF district or renewal area in 2015 was simply a surface parking lot. You can see the aerial photo of that as well as pictures of what the condition was. Not a lot of activity in this area. And then this is also a bird's eye view of what this area looked like. Again, all surface parking. The property taxes in the area before the development generated $2,100, of which the city share was about $367. And so any new development above this amount was then be available for the TIF district. The city was trying to identify where we could put more parking downtown, such as a parking ramp, parking garage, and this was the site that we were looking at. However, maybe we got some of our inspiration on a tour to Lincoln, Nebraska. This is actually a parking garage integrated with housing on top and commercial on the main floor. Some of us took a trip down there and took a look at it and thought, wouldn't it be nice if future parking garages in Fargo looked more like this and less like the single-use parking ramps that we have now. So we put together a renewal plan for the area. This was sort of an early concept where we could have a parking garage and development out on the edge. That plan was adopted by the City Commission in late 2015. The second step in the process after we put the plan together was so we sold bonds and we built the Roberts Commons parking garage with the idea that would spur at least 2 buildings because parking would be available in that area. So the parking garage cost about $13 million. We sold $10 million in general obligation bonds, had about $3 million in the parking fund, and paid for the structure that way. But in order to pay off those general obligation bonds, the TIF district was created to help pay for those bonds, as well as the income from the parking garage. The private development then came along. This is where the property taxes come from. First of all, there was Roberts Commons, the Roberts building that's on the south, west, and the east side of the parking garage. It's hard to see it. The Dillard building came along right after that. We were fortunate that property sold and was being developed. And now currently the Kessler building that's south of Roberts Commons is under construction. So the new development, we didn't have much there before. The Roberts building completed is valued at $11 million. Dillard is valued at $16 million. And Kessler North was in the TIF district. Kind of unusual that we all have one building that's half in a TIF district and half out, but we estimate that'll be $9.7 million. Total $37 million in development. Once the Renaissance Zone exemptions expire, the TIF income would be about close to $500,000 a year. So this is just more into maybe a little into the weeds on the financing. That we have a net operating income from the parking garage. There'd be TIF income. Other parking facilities provide some revenue until the Renaissance Zone exemptions expire. Then in the long term, there's net income from both operations, and after debt is paid, that's helping finance mercantile. So step 5 in the year 2036. There'll be property taxes of $499,000 versus the $2,100. The city share will be about $90,000. The benefits from this particular renewal district are it eliminated that blighted surface parking. We provided more parking downtown. There are 454 spaces in the garage. New economic activity, 11 new businesses, more active downtown. If you're down in this area, you'll certainly see a lot more people on the sidewalk than you did before. New housing, 265 housing units. Our building permit revenue from all of these projects was about $250,000, as well as that long-term property tax increase. And then here's are just a few photos of Roberts, some of the activity in the alley, the restaurant, the Dillard building in front of that. This is a view from one of the apartments on the upper floor. Beer and Fish Company in the alley, another restaurant. Then this is the Kessler building. It's under construction. This is going to be also parking, main floor retail, and housing. This is an image of what it'll look like when it's done. So we like to kind of replicate this along the river, maybe on a little larger scale. So we looked at redevelopment potential along the river. We got out our downtown plan, and this is really one of the questions for the Planning Commission when I get to the end is, does this proposed renewal plan that you was included in your packet, does it fit with the overall Go 2030 comprehensive plan, which encourages infill development, as well as the future land use plan that was included in the downtown in focus plan. We're primarily focused east of 4th Street from the railroad tracks on the north down to Prairie St. John's on the south. That's the general area. The plan called for mixed use, commercial and residential along the river, and this plan does that. Some ideas where we have or potential for redevelopment that we see is it includes the some private property, the American Federal Service parking lot, and a lawn care business. The city, after a flood acquisition, owns a now pretty much vacant warehouses, or it's a vacant warehouse. Not to get completely vacant, we have a few city cars stored in there. There's a private development to the south. The public health building over here is vacant. And so we have a lot of properties, not unlike Rob's example, where there's not a lot of activity along the river. We get further south, we see some private properties south of the City Hall parking lot that's been listed for sale, so it could probably be developed. Mid-America Steel site, also a flood acquisition that now sits empty. We go further south of Maine. There's some private development that's already being redone. The city owns a remnant of the Park East apartment building. There's a lot of interest in development. And then the Fargo Housing Authority high-rise, they're in the process of moving everyone out of that. And so that would likely be redeveloped in the future. It gets further south.
Excuse me for just a second. Jim,
Yes.
could I ask a question? It was something that came up when I was looking at the plans earlier. Could we go back to the previous slide? It has the high rise on it. Yeah, I was just wondering, I drive on that road by the Midtown Dam a lot, 2nd, and then of course 4th Street. And I always look at that parking lot that's in the corner right there. And I just was hoping that that would be included in this redevelopment possibility because it's such an eyesore. It's just to the east of the Y. Do you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah, that will be in the renewal plan area. I'm not trying to identify every possible redevelopment because I think other things will occur that we probably don't anticipate today, but that's a good point. Relatively large surface parking lot. I don't know if the utilization on that, I know sometimes it seems full, but that might be a potential area for some housing where they could share parking with the office in the future.
Yeah, since I drive by there so often, most of the time it doesn't have much parking in it. And I was wondering if it was owned by HUD or if it was owned by the high rise there. And that's the reason it was so underutilized.
It's privately owned. I can't recall the gentleman's name, but I think Sanford leases most of it out, and then there's a small pharmacy on the main floor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Then we go down by Prairie St. John. They're redoing their hospital facility. And there's some property to the south there. Again, you see that parking lot, and if there might be some potential for redevelopment of that site. So the general activities, this is a real brief 3-slide summary of what we've thinking about in the next few years and things that are included in the plan. One would be to sell what's Second Street South. That's the old Park East property. There's a lot of interest in developing that. There's an older school warehouse on the north side. The strategy that would be there to demolish the site, clear it out and make it available for development. I think developers would be more confident in taking it on if it was a clean site versus what the building on there today. We've got the old public health building that's sitting vacant, and there's some interest and potential for redevelopment there or an adjacent. And then there needs to be some site planning done for the old Mid-America Steel site. Questions like flood protection, cleanup, many more questions than answers at this point. So that's probably too early to be trying to request proposals on that one. In 2022, I think we could, start some initial demolition of old Mid-America to kind of get that ready for development. We've talked to the Fargo Housing Authority about some sort of partnership with redevelopment of the high-rise site. And then there's other privately owned sites that might need redevelopment incentives. Again, those would be worked out on a project-by-project basis. Long-term, looking ahead a few years, looking at how we could implement affordable housing in the area. Mid-America, it's some infrastructure, redevelopment of that site. And then in the civic center area, some public facilities that could enhance the development and look of that. Wouldn't be enough TIF to get real deep into all of this. Performing Arts Center would have to be financed in some other manner, likely pedestrian bridge, some more work on the Civic Plaza, maybe a skyway connection to the City Hall, and potential to add on to the Civic Center parking ramp. So beyond that, there'd probably be more redevelopment incentives. NP Avenue needs reconstruction. So the long-term plan take a long time to implement. Projected TIF income, it's kind of anybody's guess because you don't know how soon that private development will happen. But we view this renewal plan as another tool to encourage development along the river. The entire value of the property in this district, privately owned property, is $60 million. I think over the next 15 years, that could be probably tripled to over $200 million if all these underutilized sites had more development. So we have the Renaissance Zone tool. It's in an opportunity zone. Next few years, there might be some, that might be something that could benefit. So really the role of the Planning Commission here is to, before the Planning Commission acts, before the City Commission acts on this renewal plan, they're required to send it to the Planning Commission. Get your thought as, does this fit with overall GO 2030 comprehensive plan as well as our downtown plan? Again, the Planning Commission has sort of a 30-day window to either comment or not comment on that. And so that's why I'm here today for this recommendation that we find that it's consistent with the GO 2030 comprehensive plan of the City of Fargo. Be happy to answer any questions.
One question from myself would be, by identifying these areas that you just brought up in this plan, they know that they can apply for a TIF. I mean, people from other areas outside of this area, they have to go through a different application process. I mean, it's a little bit more cumbersome if it hasn't been approved.
Yeah, that is a different characteristic if we proceed that. There are two types of TIFs. One is where the developer comes to the city and says, I'd like some help. And I'll use Brew Hall as an example because they will likely, or they've approached us already and said, we need some help with cleaning up this site and we need some infrastructure. Those are the two things we generally look at. And the city said, yeah, we'll help you, or no, we won't. And they generally real smaller, site-specific project. When the city initiates it, it's sort of one big, TIF fund that gets set up. So that developers, rather than coming to the city and saying, I'd like a TIF to help here, what they would say is, I want you to earmark my revenue from my redevelopment for these specific costs. And so the overall TIF would already be in place, but the developer would be asking for TIF funds from this district fund rather than a single fund just for them.
Thank you for clarifying that. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Gilmore? Any
I'd just
questions?
like to make a comment that it's very exciting.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions for Jim.
Yes.
Jim, what is the total revenue coming in now at the TIF? What would that be?
Well, yeah, right now there's 60 million in valuation, and there's no TIF revenue because the TIF will only be the incremental increase. And so as projects are developed, there'd be TIF money. So, the first year there might be a very small amount based on some development that's already underway. But until these projects start, there isn't any revenue. If we create this TIF district and we're unsuccessful in getting development going, there won't be any money to allocate to anything.
So it's right at par today then. So we don't go backwards.
Right.
You don't collect any of the money.
So right, the city, the county, the schools will still continue to receive property taxes on the $60 million in value that's in this district. So none of those taxing jurisdictions will receive any less money, unless some development, burns down or something. But going forward, then they wouldn't see really an increase until the very end of the TIF district, which would be 25 years out.
And the second question I had is, so when projects happen, money comes into the TIF district. What organization, what entity makes the decisions on what investments occur? Who's in charge of it? So, you do a bunch of development, there's $50 million in there. Who decides what are the priorities of that TIF district and where the money should be spent?
That would be the Fargo City Commission. So the property tax payers would pay the money to the county like the rest of their tax bill. That incremental increase comes back into the City of Fargo TIF fund. And just like other city funds, the city that's allocated and budgeted by the Fargo City Commission.
But for every project, if you decide you're going to do a sidewalk renovation or an improvement or whatever,
yes,
is it going through some organization within the city, or do they approve each and every expenditure?
The City Commission is going to approve each and every expenditure. So if they decide to demolish a building or spend money on a plaza, that would have to be budgeted and approved by the City Commission.
Through the planning commission then, or who's doing the work internally then?
If it's an engineering project, if you're rebuilding some infrastructure, such as a dike through Mid-America Steel, then it would be the engineering department. If it was something on the city plaza, it would be likely the planning commission, or the planning department that would help, contract for that. So it's just whichever department gets assigned it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jim.
You want to do the motion?
Yeah. Yep, put the motion back up if you can.
I'll make approval. I'll move approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is this a roll call vote?
Yes.
It's a roll call vote. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Sobolik,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, have we got, let's see. Anything else on the agenda? Not that. All right, nothing else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner,
Oh, sorry.
are you going to talk about live meetings?
Oh, yes. Rocky and I currently, every month before the regular meeting, we go through an agenda review, and there's a couple things we've been talking about. And as soon as we can probably get in person a little bit more, the other question is right now is the staff was going to send out a kind of a poll to us commissioners to see who would be comfortable conceivably for an in-person, starting in-person meetings. So be looking for that probably in the next week or so. Give your comments about meeting in person. They would conceivably spread us out a little bit, probably half of us up here on the stage and the other half down below. And then as soon as I think there's a comfort level, our brown bags are so much more successful when we can do them in person. And I think we've been Miranda came up with sent in a bunch of thoughts about some brown bag topics. We've been tossing around the idea on those topics also that with the LDC reform coming up, that there's probably some topics that would be key around that, like form-based planning. So look, we'll probably be sending out some information on that too in the near future, but please look at the poll that's going to come out about in-person, and we'll determine what happens for the April meeting.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Donald Kress from the Planning Department. We'd only do that if we could get to the point where we could have everybody live as opposed to.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will not go part virtual and part intact, or part in here, so.
Ideally not. Thank you, sir.
Let us kind of know your comfort levels on that, so.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe I have a question for either you or perhaps Donald. Why are you resistant to doing a mix of virtual and in-person? I can just say from all the different boards I serve on, that's been a topic of conversation of how well it's working, especially when you maybe otherwise couldn't make it in person, to be able to, hook in virtually. So I'm happy to come back, but because I got my shots, so I'm very excited about that. But
so did I, Mary.
I just think there's times that that virtual would maybe be the only option.
Yeah.
So just would love to hear from
Donald, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I think we realize that there are individual situations where people are not available, but just in general, having 3 of you here and 4 of you remote, probably would work better if we're here entirely. But please include those in your comments when we send that out, and we can take a further review of those, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Don't everybody.
So moved.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there a second? Come on, Rocky.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. No discussion. All in favor? Hang up.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned.